Good afternoon. Nice to see everyone here on this beautiful sunny day. And as I walked here today, I was reminded how there is very little shade in Chinatown, so keep that in mind today. I'm going to give a very brief kind of overview on the context of the work that the city's doing that really sets the scene as has provided the opportunity for this dialogue today. Is there a button that I press? I just smile at Pedro. Okay. And fascinated, Aaron, that you've never told us about your grandmother before, but I'm rest assured that we won't be having any plaques in Thomas Street. So the city's work in Chinatown is really underpinned by our Sustainable Sydney 2030 strategy, and I think most of you here today are probably aware of our Sustainable Sydney 2030 strategy, but for those who aren't, the Sustainable Sydney 2030 plan is really the city's response to a whole range of pressing issues that Sydney faces in the future, from climate change to traffic congestion to housing affordability, social inequity, and so forth, and population increase. So a number of years ago, a team of us at the city, some of us sitting in this audience today, were really given the charge by the Lord Mayor and the Council to really develop this action plan on how will Sydney deal with the future. And we did that over a fairly rapid period of time with a lot of public consultation. It's interesting, yesterday, you might have read in the paper, the federal government launched the State of Cities report, and I thought it was really interesting that Sydney has been, over the last 10 years, the fastest growing inner city area in Australia with a population increase of 21%. So if that continues, all the more reason why we need a really firm, clear plan on how we're going to deal with all these issues in the future. We spent about 2 years of very intense research, of community consultation with a broad range of residents, workers, visitors, businesses and so forth to develop this plan, and we came up with the 2030 plan, and the tag for that was green, global and connected. I'm not going to take you through all of that today, but in summary, the plan has 10 targets, 10 strategic directions, 10 big project ideas, 5 big moves and a whole lot of actions. In the last few years at the city, we've been madly working across the organisation, whether it's on green infrastructure, rolling out our cycleways, looking at our public domain projects, a whole range of activities across the whole organisation. And as the Lord Mayor said, it's made it a very exciting place to be. Thanks, Pedro. There are 4 particular strategic directions that came out of the 2030 plan that really, I guess, align with the work we're doing in Chinatown. That is really creating a city for pedestrians and cyclists, creating a lively and engaging city centre, a place where people actually want to come when they're not working, vibrant local communities and economies, and a cultural and creative city. Thanks, Pedro. One of the key aspects to 2030 was a piece of work we did before 2030 with the urbanist from Denmark, Jan Gell, and we did what we call a public space and life study of the city. It's like a health check of the city. It looks at the quality and quantity of pedestrians and how we experience the city, and that piece of work was really informative because of the methodology he brings to cities. You can compare how Sydney fares compared to other cities, and we'd never done that before. It really taught us a lot about our city that we thought we knew, but it really gave us a lot more of a handle on that. For instance, we completely underperform in terms of the amount of pedestrians that are in our city compared to other global cities around the world. That we wait too long to cross roads in Sydney, and that we just don't spend quality or leisure time in our city, and we don't engage very well with our water's edge, our harbour. So from all of that work, that then was translated into how we developed the 2030 plan. And 2030 really provided what I kind of think, it's like the war room on let's attack the city, let's win back space for people. And it does feel like that sometimes on a daily basis. One of the key, so 2030 was the catalyst for this real change and how will we transform our city centre. One of the key project ideas was the transformation of George Street as a new civic pedestrian light rail spine in the city centre. And that project, by introducing light rail and removing buses, creating a pedestrian priority zone in the city, really will have a transformative effect on the entire city centre. The other key project, this is just an example of some of these 10 key projects, was creating what we call a livable green network. It's a pedestrian plan for the whole of the local government area, so not just the city centre but all the villages, to make sure that walking and cycling is a viable alternative to driving. So there are a number of those really key projects that we're working on at the moment. In order to transform the city centre into this traffic-calmed, vibrant place, we've embarked on a series of quite sort of focused public domain urban design studies of the city centre. We've broken up into 8 precincts. Chinatown is one of them. And we are looking in a kind of forensic way at how we can win back space from the car for people, for pedestrians. The first area we've looked at is Chinatown, which we're talking about today. We're also in the middle of doing a study on what we call the Harbour Village North area, which takes into the neighbourhoods of Millers Point, Dawes Point, Walsh Bay and Barangaroo. And it really is about the city getting ready for the change that Barangaroo brings to Sydney. And we're also doing some work in the retail core. And my design team, who are here today, are leading that charge, together with our transport team as well. So our goal is that we want to develop short, medium and long-term strategies and projects that can deliver this change. And I think if you look at cities like New York, where they've done this in a sort of short-term model, just that unlocking of space from the car back to people already brings this transformative effect. It brings a new level of activity and a new level of energy back into the city. So Chinatown has no shortage of vibrancy, but what it does have is a shortage of public space. So our study, which we did collaboratively with Spackman Mossop, who are here today, showed us that we could win back space from the car for people quite considerably, and that in this study we recognised that Chinatown had a heart but is expanding, as Aaron referred to earlier, and that we really needed to ensure these connections beyond the heart of Chinatown to the greater city to ensure its future vitality and connectivity. We recommended 11 project-specific projects and also a whole range of overlay projects looking at lighting, landscape, public art and new furniture for Chinatown that would enrich the quality of Chinatown but also celebrate the diversity of language and the visual energy that Chinatown has today. So we were absolutely not interested in projects that homogenise Chinatown. Since our study, we've had some projects underway, which we've referred to Little Hayes Street, Factory Street and Kimber Lane, which Jason's working on. That work also aligned very nicely with our laneway strategy that we put together before 2030. But today we're embarking on this two new projects, which is Thomas Street and Hayes Street, and I'll just talk very briefly about Hayes Street as well. So Thomas Street is, I think most of you will be aware where Thomas Street is. It's just where the light rail runs, right next to Paddy's Market. It's a very important north-south link in Chinatown. And the proposed closure that we're looking at, that we know we have certainty that we can deliver, is between Ultimo Road and Thomas Lane. Originally we have looked at the complete closure, and I think that would sort of fit into our short, medium and long-term proposition. The short-term, more immediate proposition is that we can close between Ultimo and Thomas Lane. And just to give you a sense of scale of what that space is, it's about 900 square metres, which is equivalent to Union Square in Ultimo Piermont, or if anyone thinks of New York, Paley Park in New York, it's about 2.5 times the size of Paley Park, or the other public space in Sydney would be Chifley Square in the heart of the city. So just to give you a sense of scale, because I think it is important to have scale. When you think of gardens and the opportunities for this space, the scale of it is critical. The next priority project is Hayes Street. So that's the work that we did with Spackman Mossop, Thomas Street before and Thomas Street after. And if you think of Dixon Street and how busy and crowded that is, the release of and even a little bit more public space would have a transformative effect on Chinatown. Hayes Street, here in the slide you can see Hayes Street's an incredibly harsh environment, particularly this section from George Street to the west. But it's a very important east-west connection. Where the light rail runs, it provides a connection symbolically and physically between Belmore Park all the way through to the powerhouse. But how many of us think of that as a sort of connection in the city? We think with the opportunity for widening footpaths and the sort of softening of its edges along Paddy's Market and the north side could completely transform that pedestrian link. The original concept that's in our report that you can read online was to move the tracks and to kind of realign and buy a bit more space back on the southern side of Hayes Street. But that comes at a price tag of $20 million, and I think at the moment our priorities probably wouldn't go into that kind of infrastructure spend. So I think this, I know we're looking today at Hayes Street primarily, but I think keeping in the back of your mind the opportunities with, Thomas Street, but keeping in mind the other opportunity of Hayes Street is important as well. The Lord Mayor's already mentioned this, and so has Aaron, but alongside all this public domain work we're doing is our kind of reignited energy about creating public art in Sydney, and high quality public art that will transform our city. And so there's just some slides here now. Sorry, that's also, as I mentioned, the 11 site-specific projects. I've only referred to Thomas and Hay, but Key Street and many of the other streets in Chinatown, we have equal sort of ideas on how to transform those, but we're not covering those today. We've mentioned Jason's project, and I won't steal any of Jason's thunder because he's about to talk. But just to, I guess, kind of make that point even clearer, the city is really committed to a very energetic public art program over the next sort of 10 years, and already the last couple of years we've created quite a lot of new public art in the city, and much of that has been integrated into projects that we're creating. On the left is Adam Norton's Laneway project he did a number of years ago. In the middle, these are all slices of public art projects. Neil Hassard's work on the Glebe Primary School, Robert Owen's work in the Surrey Hills Library, and Warren Langley's work in Ultimo. That's just a snippet. There's also other works that we've been working with the private sector on, like the new James Angus work down at 1 Blythe Street, and Jenny Turpin and Michaela Crawford's wonderful wind lines that opened a few weeks ago in Circular Quay. Again, just to demonstrate the city's commitment and desire to have artists central to shaping the city. Sorry, and also Forgotten Songs by Michael Hill, which is pretty much finished construction now, which was a temporary work as part of our Laneways program, but it was so loved we decided to kind of recommission it as a permanent work in the city, in Ash Street, in Angel Place. Just in terms of next steps, our intention is from this work today, from this dialogue, and I hope maybe heated discussion, Aaron, that this will really help inform us on how we approach these projects, that we want to take some of this back to a broader kind of community and forum later in the year, and then we would have some sort of parallel processes to engage landscape architects and artists to work together to make these projects reality and really get on with this first thing in the new year. So we're really delighted you're all here. We're really interested, the staff at the city, to hear what you've all got to say, and really interested in doing this kind of work before we run into our usual kind of commissioning of projects, to have these sort of moments of taking a breath and thinking about the possibilities. So thank you.